Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about monthly expenses of living in Australia. Raise your hands. All right, hello and welcome everyone back to another vlog. So this is Dr. Naj Sumro. I haven't been able to make some videos over the past few months, but um, it has been a busy time. But today's video is going to be special, and it has been asked from me time and again. So it is on special demand that I have made sure I made this video. So without further ado, today I'm going to talk about, as you've seen in the description and the title of this video, about the expenses in Australia and how expensive is Australia, how much money you make, and what type of savings you can do, and what does the lifestyle cost in Australia. So basically living expenses at the end of the month. So I'm going to break down all my living expenses and let you know how much does it cost me working as a junior doctor with a family living in Australia. How much does it cost me every month? All right, so that's going to be the pretext for today's video. It's actually a sequel to my previous video where I spoke about the earnings of a junior doctor. So if you haven't seen that video, click on the link in the description and have a look at it. But I'll basically, what I'll be doing is talking about breaking down all the different costs. Now, before I start getting into the individual costs in Australia, it is highly variable and depends on person to person, and also depends on your lifestyle. So the costs that living expenses that I will be talking about are very subjective and depends on how your lifestyle is. So for me, it would be something, and for you it would be something different, but you can guess an estimation. I'll tell you the breakdowns as I go about it. So without further ado, let's get into that. So what I've done is I've got a list of all the expenses that I have in Australia. I'm going to run you through all of them. So I've got it charted out over here. So the biggest expense that you will have in Australia is going to be your accommodation. That's the biggest expense. In most places, that will actually make up about 50% of your salary. And if any accommodation takes about 50% of your salary, then that means you're never going to be able to save any money at the end of the day, because that's a huge proportion of your salary is gone. So after living 5 years in a major city in Australia, so I used to live in Sydney for 5 years, I figured out that it is one of the most expensive cities in the world with one of the highest rents in the world. So I decided that I am not going to further live over there and move into the country. When I say country, means small regional towns or smaller places which are a lot more cheaper to live in. So essentially what I did is I moved out of Sydney and basically settled in rural regional Australia, where my expenses have been slightly reduced. So on average, if you're living in a city like Sydney and you're renting a small apartment, you're going to pay about $1,700 to $2,000 a month. Whereas I'm living in quite a big 3-bedroom house next to the beach, and I'm paying about $1,400 a month. So my main expense over here in terms of my daily expenses or monthly expenses is going to be my rent, which is $1,400. Now that's just the rent. Obviously, when you live in a place, you pay the bills as well. So the bills will include your electricity bill, your gas bill, your water bill, and your internet bill. So on average, I pay about $600 a month in terms of all the bills. So if you want a breakdown of it, my electricity bill every month is about $200. My internet bill is about $100 a month, so that makes about $300. And the next $300 is a combination of my gardening charges, my maintenance slash gas bill slash water bill, or any other miscellaneous cleaning costs, or if you have a garden you maintain that sort of a thing. So in total, like, I'm just giving you a rough estimate that I spend $2,000 on my accommodation every month. Now any expenses after that are a bit of a disclaimer and depends on your family size. So at the moment, I live with my family. So I've got two young kids. Then I've got my wife, and my mother also is living with me temporarily over for the last year or so. So this all includes a whole family set. So my expenses are based on this family of five. Um, so the first expense that I've already spoken about, that's going to be the accommodation. So that's $2,000. The next one is my car. So car is an essential requirement to live in Australia, particularly if you're living in rural regional areas. You definitely need a car. The public transportation is next to zero over here. So car becomes a really important trade of the tool. So I actually own two cars. I used to have one car, but I found it very challenging with me going to work for extended periods of time. Um, the family didn't have any car, so I own two cars. You obviously would have seen one of my videos where I posted my new car that I've got, the Z4. uh, so in terms of cars, there are a couple of main expenses. In fact, three major expenses in terms of the cars. The first one is going to be your yearly registration, again depending on where you're living. If you're living in a major city, then your yearly registration, which is the government cost to maintain a registration on the car, is about $1,000. But living in rural regional areas, that drops to about $600 to $700. So that's number one expense. The second expense obviously is fuel. So depending on how much you're running the car, again, living in the city, your distances increase because you're going from one place to another. Everything is far away from each other. But in rural regional areas, your distances are smaller, so the fuel cost is lower as well. And the third expense is the insurance. So I always maintain that always keep full insurance. In Australia, that's very important to have insurance. So I always keep full comprehensive insurance, which is about, say, around $50 a month, $50 to $60 a month, roughly, sort of a thing. So if I was to break down my car payments per month, I estimate that I pay around $250 per car. So the way I'll break it down is the registration of a car is about $700 a year. So that's about $60 a month. Then insurance is about $60 a month. That's about $120. And in terms of the fuel, that's quite variable. I would say my fuel over a course of a month is for one car is between $100 to $150. So I'll average it out. I'll say for every car, I pay $250 in total. So $130 worth of fuel in a month, and then $120 breaking down the cost of the insurance and the registration. So to maintain a car, without any further additions in terms of mechanical works or anything, you need at least $250 a month to maintain a car. Because I've got two cars, so I'm spending $500 in total. And that does not include any repair costs, any maintenance costs, or any service costs on the car. You will have to obviously keep some contingency budget for that. So in total, I am so far paying $500 for my cars, two cars. So this brings down the total to $2,500, which was $2,000 for my bills and my rent, and then $500 for my car. So these are basic expenses that you will need to incur. Okay, so moving on from here, the next expense that I have is, I would categorize it into social / recreational / sports expense. So I'm quite a bit into sports. I have an interest in sports medicine, so I make sure that I keep myself healthy and maintain a good lifestyle. So what I do is, I've got a family membership in the gym, for which I pay $60 a fortnight. So that includes all my family, including swimming pool and everything. So I pay about $60 a fortnight. That takes you up to around $120 a month for that. Then I'm a member of cricket club and sailing club. So I pay around $300 a year for the cricket club, and then I pay around $200 a year for the sailing club. And then sometimes I do some other sporting recreational activity, like going for golf or some other paintball and all those sort of here and there stuff. So in total, what I say is I have spent about $200 a month on sports activities. All right, so that brings my total up to $2,700. The next big expense, so the fourth one, is going to be grocery. Now, grocery again is highly variable on what you eat and how much you eat and how big is your family. Again, as I said, I've got total of 5 members in my family, so my grocery expenses are slightly higher than others if you're living just a couple or individually. Also, my grocery expense is higher because I try to tend to sway towards healthy foods. I'm a big advocate of health and eating healthy stuff. So what I do is I tend to buy fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, a lot of meat in the diet, a lot of fish in the diet, a lot of seafood. I totally avoid all canned foods, so I don't eat any processed foods. That's I feel that that is a biggest issue in terms of our modern diet, eating a lot of fast food slash canned food. I remember that a lot of my roommates used to buy canned tomatoes, and I just never tend to buy that. I'll always go and buy like fresh tomatoes. So a canned tomato for 500 grams would be like $1, but fresh tomatoes maybe $3, for example. So, and also in terms of milk, I don't drink packaged milk like long life milk. I feel that that's highly processed, so I only drink the refrigerated pasteurized milk with shorter shelf life. So it's slightly more expensive. So on average, we spend on grocery slash toiletry slash household stuff like washing, hand washing liquid and soaps and surf and all that sort of thing. So we all buy that together in terms of grocery shopping. So in every month, every week, my grocery expense is about $250. That includes almost every day one meal being meat slash fish, and then the other meal being veggies slash fresh vegetables and fresh produce basically. So that brings my monthly total of groceries slash household toiletries and stuff or personal hygiene products to about $1,000 a month. So that's what I spend on that. So in total so far I've spent $3,700. The next item, and some of you may or may not have it depending on your visa status. A lot of you will come over here as students, so you will have to have it. So that's health insurance. Now, because I've got a family of 5, I pay health insurance of about $350. You you can get away without paying health insurance, but I feel that some of the things in the Australian health system are not covered. For example, dental issues, and I have over the years have had quite a few dental issues, so I tend to maintain my health insurance because that covers partially for my dental expenses and also physiotherapy and those sort of injuries and all those sort of things. So I tend to pay about $350 a month on health insurance for the family. So that gives us a good comprehensive cover for most of the things. And I'm quite happy with that. So it turns out to be about $4,000 a year, but you got to pay that. So in total so far, I've spent about $4,050. These are essential expenses. Obviously, you'll have to pay for these things. Then the sixth category I would put in would be incidental slash car service slash haircut slash, things that will pop up here and there. And I put those incidentals as about $300. So, getting a haircut once a month would cost you about $25 to $30. Then you'll have car service every 6 months. That'll cost you about $400 or $500 depending on where you go. So you invite it to a friend's place, you buy a gift, you do that sort of a thing, or you invite people to your house. So those sort of things would roughly keep about $300 in those incidental expenses. The next category, obviously, we're human beings, so this category is also important. That's called entertainment and shopping category. For entertainment and shopping category, I have kept about $400. What sort of places would I categorize it? Obviously, that'll include going out and eating dinner with family. We try to do that once a fortnight. We don't quite go very often. I think that becomes really expensive, and depending on how your lifestyle is. I live a very basic, average lifestyle. so I don't splash out a lot of money going out and eating out every time. So essentially once a fortnight we are going out and having some dinner, so it'll cost us about $100 every fortnight around there. Then we are buying incidental things like clothing, shoes. Obviously I've got family, so I buy things for my family as well. Sometimes you're going out and having coffee. Obviously once or twice a week we go out and have coffee and stuff. And then sometimes we invite friends and families over, we go to their places, so we buy gifts and all those sort of things. So you have to put down $100 a week on those sort of expenses. So $400 a month is the rough budget that I'll put in. So far I've spent $4,750. The next major expense for me is professional development, and I'm a firm believer you've got to improve yourself every time. And obviously improving yourself requires you to enroll in courses and do certain things. So I spend on average about $250 a month on professional development. Sometimes I actually spend a little bit more than that. So what the major expenses, so I'd say about I spend $4,000 to $5,000 a year on myself. So I do one international trip for a conference every year going overseas, which would cost me about $3,000. Then I have to pay my AMA fees, opera fees, which is about $800 a year. AMA fees is about $400. Then I attend a local conference, which will be say about $1,000 or $1,500, including transportation and accommodation and the registration fee. So on average, I would say one would spend about $250 on themselves. So that gives a grand total of $5,000. Now these are bare minimum basic expenses. You will have to keep aside about $1,000 a month in the end, or between $800 to $1,000 a month if you can save on it, because once a year you'd obviously, if you're from overseas, you would go for an overseas trip with your family, and that is going to be quite a major expense. So just for 5 people going overseas in terms of tickets would cost you $6, $7, or maybe $8,000. So I keep around $10,000 at the end of the year. So I save around $1,000, keep it for the rainy day. Although because of Corona and some other issues, I haven't been able to travel overseas for the last couple of years with family. So obviously I've saved on that expense, but I know that that expense is going to come in at some point. So for a family of 5, just to basically live in Australia, you would need about $5,000 on average. You may get away with plus minus $500 to $1,000 here and there, but yeah, if you're earning around $600,000, you can live quite comfortably with all the basic necessities met. But if your expenses are a bit higher and you need to do some maintenance and other things, traveling, a lot more travel and stuff, then you're obviously your expenses are going to explode, and then even $8,000 to $10,000 aren't enough. So that's that in terms of my expenses. Now a lot of people will ask me, if I come individually, or I've lived 7 years individually just by myself, I didn't have a family, how would your expenses look like? I think when I was living by myself, my expenses were around $2,000 a month. That's living in Sydney, but living quite average. So I was sharing a room with someone else, so my rent expenses were really low. And then we used to have communal kitchen where we would share things and cook together, so we would save a lot of money on that. But obviously I'd say around $2,000 would be sort of an average thing for people living by themselves in a city like Sydney or Melbourne. You can get away with less than that, but then obviously you'll be compromising on other things such as gym membership, going out with friends, eating out food, and then also doing some extracurricular activity. So those sort of things. So guys, thank you very much for listening to my vlog. Those were my experiences, and I just wanted to share with you my lifestyle and the expenses I have. If you have any further questions, flick me an email. I'll put my email down in the description. If you need any career counseling or guidance, I do run a service where I guide people to how to settle in Australia, particularly if you're in the medical field. So yeah, so hit me up for that. And thank you very much for that. Ciao.